I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. Confirmation of the agenda that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the agenda for September 3rd, 2024 public hearing as presented. May I have a mover? Deputy Reeve, Councillor Wright, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Riva. I have to declare conflict of interest because we were included into the 60 meters circulation area.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Approval of minutes of the previous meeting that the Committee of Adjustment hereby adopts the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment hearing held August 12th, 2024 as presented. May I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Wright, all in favor? Carried. Statement of precedent. If any decision reached by this committee cannot be used to set a precedent. 6.1 file MV04-2024 location concession 3 north half of lot 31 East Wawanosh Ward Township of North Huron 83752 Hoover Line. Applicants Bellwood Farms Limited care of Henry Boss. At this time I'll ask Planner Holman to present. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the committee for having me. I'm just going to grab the remote. You can just go to the next slide, Olivia, please, when you have a chance. So as mentioned, this property is on Hoover Line. It's designated in zone general agriculture. There is an existing dwelling, a drive shed accessory building, and an existing veal barn. The proposal before us this evening is a proposal to allow an approximate 9,100 square foot chicken barn with a 2,240 square foot manure storage building. Oh, sorry, you'll just have to go to the next slide, Olivia. Thanks. So some backgrounds on the variances requested. So the applicant did provide their calculations that they calculated for the minimum distance separation calculations. So this is required for any livestock and manure facilities. They provided calculations for the front yard to the road setback to the road allowance, as well as the side yard and to the neighboring dwelling, which is considered a type A use under MDS. And the request is to reduce the MDS calculations to the neighboring dwelling from 197 meters to 149 meters and 169 meters from the barn and manure storage respectively. And then also the zoning bylaw sets forth a minimum front yard setback of 60 meters for barns or manure storage from the front yard, and that's proposed to be reduced to 38 meters. The interior side yard is proposed to be reduced from 30 meters to 18 meters. And these setbacks are both measured from the barn because that's the nearest point. The next slide, please. So here's just some site photos of the property. So this is from the property looking south towards their neighboring property. Next photo, please. So this the photo on the top is looking towards the north. And shows a portion of the existing barn, and as well also shows the slope going down towards the east. And then the bottom photo shows towards the west, towards the road allowance. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan provided by the applicant, which shows the approximate location of the barn on the and then on the edge towards the northeast is the proposed manure storage location. This also shows the existing barn on the property, which between the existing barn on the property and the new barn, it's proposed to have a setback of approximately 45 feet between the two. Next photo, please. So here is a more detailed site plan, and it also shows the 197 required meter setback from the neighboring dwelling, which is on the property to the south as indicated by the blue dot. Next photo, please. So in terms of comments, no concerns were received from staff. And specific comments note that Public Works have noted that just that no new entrances will be granted onto Hoover Line, as the property has existing 2 entrances onto that road. As of current, we have not received any written comments from neighbors or members of the public, but verbal comments may be received this evening. Next slide, please. So in terms of the review, my report, as always, goes into greater detail, and it was concluded that the proposed variances meet these 4 tests under the Planning Act, being that it's minor in nature, desirable, and meets the intent of the township zoning bylaw. Overall, it was determined that this location was the most feasible for building on the property. As to the north or east of the building cluster, there is quite a dramatic drop in elevation, which would require significant additional fill and may not be able to utilize the existing driveway. The proposed location will also limit the amount of arable land taken out of production and is still a reasonable distance to the neighboring barn to the south. For the front yard setback, my report goes into greater detail, but as I mentioned before, the MDS calculations also do provide these setbacks, except notwithstanding the zoning bylaw does require higher setbacks at 60 and 30 meters for the front and side yard respectively. But it is worth noting that the MDS calculations had a setback of 39 meters from the road allowance, and the reduction is proposed at 38 meters for the side yard. It was calculated at 18 meters, and the proposed reduction is 20 meters. So in the context of these MDS setbacks, which mostly focus on odor and nuisance impact, it is considered minor in nature. The reduced yard will also allow for a reasonable separation between the 2 barns for access while maintaining buffering to the property to the south. For the MDS reduction to the dwelling, it's helpful to put these in context of a percentage. So it represented 24% reduction for the barn and a 14% reduction for the manure storage. The manure storage is further away from the proposed barn. And it also, the barn on the neighboring property to the south also does offer some additional buffering. So the dwelling is not necessarily the next immediate dwelling. So it's not anticipated that there would be negative impacts in this case, and the variances are considered minor in this case. So next slide, please, Olivia. Thank you. So it is recommended that the application be approved subject to the following standard conditions, so that the structure be generally constructed within the footprint contained on the sketch that accompanied the application, and the variance be approved for a valid period of 18 months from the date of the committee's decision. So this is the amount of time to get a building permit. And then just a reminder to the committee that once they've considered their first motion, that a second motion to the effect of public and agency comments is required. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you again very much, Hannah, for your report. Well done as usual. Appreciate that very much. This time, 6.12, opportunity to comment on application by applicant. And seeing none, opportunity for comment by others in attendance. None noted. Opportunity for questions, comments by Committee of Adjustment members. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer, please.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Yeah, it was noted to me earlier that now I hope that we can treat the neighbor if they choose to expand, that if we can treat them equally.
Yeah, so through the Reeve, yeah, the comment is noted. I think it's also worth noting that some of the points that I've made on this application, although we don't set a precedence, would still be applicable for that property, right? This property is similar. It has the barns closest to the neighboring property. It does buffer the dwelling. So those would be things that we would also consider if there were to be an application, notwithstanding there's no precedence. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments from any of the other members? None noted. Summary of comments and recommendations of Huron County Planning and Development Department. Ed?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the motion is before you to approve the application subject to those conditions. And then once the committee provides direction on this first motion, I'd be happy to provide my recommended motion on the second motion for public and agency comments, as this will depend on the direction the committee wants to go on the first motion.
Thank you. that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application MV 04-2024 as it applies to concession 3, north half of lot 31, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron, 83752 Hoover Line, applicant owner Bellwood Farms Limited, Henry Boss, with the conditions set out in the report presented by Hannah Hallman, planner at the September 3rd, 2024 Committee of Adjustment hearing. May I have a mover? Counselor Deputy Reeve and Counselor Palmer. All in favor? Carried. Motion number 2. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Olivia, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So based on the direction on the first motion, it is recommended that the committee select option A2, that no public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision, and that option B3 be selected, that agency comments were received in support of the application, the effect of which resulted in a decision to approve the application.
May I have a mover? Counselor Wright, Counselor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Minor variance procedure following public hearing. The Secretary Treasurer sends within 10 days a certified copy of decision indicating the last day of appealing to the OLT to the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, if requested, each person who appeared in person or by counsel at the hearing and who filed this with the Secretary Treasurer a written request for notice of the decision. If no appeal lodged after 20-day objection period has expired and no appeal has been lodged, the decision of the Committee of Adjustment is final and binding. The Secretary Treasurer shall notify the applicant. If a notice or appeal is lodged, members of the public do not have the right to appeal the decision to the Committee of Adjustment. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, a specified person under the Planning Act, or a public body that has an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. If within 20 days of the Committee of Adjustment making a decision, an appeal is lodged, the Secretary Treasurer outlining the reasons for such an appeal, and said appeal is accompanied by the required fee of $400. The Committee of Adjustment no longer retains jurisdiction over the application. If a proper appeal is lodged, the Secretary Treasurer is required to provide a proper notice to the OLT. 8, that there being no further business before the Committee of Adjustment, the September 3rd, 2024 public hearing be hereby adjourned at 5:43. Mover, Deputy Reeve, Counselor Wright, all in favor? Carried.